we're in the thick of things, it seems like, when it comes to understanding, and there's a lot of different movements that have happened since George Floyd has passed, since he was killed. So trying to figure out where I got to a point where it didn't faze me. If the global response was my response, nothing would have been done, because my response was, when's the next one going to happen? Hi, welcome to Moving to a New Place, a podcast about race, friendship, and all things in between. My name is Dalton Holloway. On this podcast as well, Mike Lennon, my former youth pastor 17 years ago. In this episode, you're going to hear a little bit of my story, my touch points with race, and how when I heard about the George Floyd incident, I felt nothing.
So for you, this idea of being conscious of race and the consciousness of difference. I've noticed this listening to different people's stories. It always seems like there's this move from sort of a life of innocence to what, like someone in our congregation shared about a friend saying something to them, and then it just, something they'd never thought of before, all of a sudden descended on them, like a consciousness that there's something wrong with, skin color kind of thing.
Yeah.
What was that for you, that you'd say that journey into this understanding?
Well, I grew up in mom and dad, and they immigrated to Canada back in the 70s. So we ended up going to a church that was literally a stone's throw away from my house. That's how we decided which church we were going to. And when we went to the church, there was maybe one other black family who attended, but I never felt like where are all the rest of the black people. That's not how I grew up. My parents were older when they had me, so their experience, it's long standing, and everyone deals with it differently. But my mom, for example, she doesn't really put up with it at all. Like at her workplace, she'd just share me stories of people trying to make some quip about Jamaica or black people, and she would just quip back like instantaneously. There was no oh, it was me, this is what's going on. It was just a part of her day to day. So she'd face it like racism, but she'd be always ready to confront it. And the thing is that everyone else who's black is facing the same thing. So it's not like it's unique. They're all in it, but everyone deals with it differently. So that was my upbringing. I knew I was different, but it wasn't this is right. Happening. Even the places that I grew up in the east end of Ottawa, I guess you could probably say we're more on the low medium income side, I suppose. So I don't remember necessarily seeing cops around, but I didn't have the talk in my upbringing about when you see a cop say these things. I grew up kind of ignorant to that sort of.
So when you saw a police officer, like fear or like it was just, there was no big response for you?
No, they were there to protect people, like fire, safety. Right. They were just part of that group of people who worked for the community. Yeah. So I never saw them as a threat to me personally.
Right. Yeah. So then the idea that there's difference, or that, when does that start to emerge for you?
Yeah, when I was 5 or 6, I think I was 6. This kid at school, I went to Manor Park Public in Rockcliffe, and this kid called me a nigger, and I didn't know what it meant. I just knew that he said it in a way that wasn't nice, I just knew it wasn't a right word. So fast forward to maybe a week later, and my mom and I are watching CBC News Ottawa, and Peter Van Dusen is the newscaster, and they're doing a spot on some demonstration on Parliament Hill I think there were some, neo-Nazi demonstrators or something. We have rights, or Jews are bad. Whatever they were saying, I don't remember exactly what they were saying.
Typical neo-Nazi.
Just what they say. Everyone just nothing new. And my mom asked me, "Oh, Dalton, has anyone ever called you like a name or anything?" And I thought about it. I said, "Yeah. Well, this kid called me a nigger once." And then the next morning, we're at the school in the principal's office saying, "Where is this kid who said that?" And I pointed him out, and he had to write me a letter of an apology.
Wow.
Saying, "I'm sorry for saying that." And that was the first time I knew that, like, that word held a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And that, that it's a powerful word.
And
what it meant, and that I knew it was enough to make my mom get up out of her seat. And it was enough for her to, there was no waiting period. Like, she would have gone to the school that night if it was open.
Yeah.
She's like, "This is not happening. Like, no one's calling my kid that name."
Yeah.
Well, I'm around.
Right.
And then when it came to civil rights, by that time I hadn't really heard much about the American story. And I mean, I knew about Jamaica a little bit when I was a kid. We're a British colony, we were slaves, and then we gained our independence, and I knew that stuff. But again, I was young. I didn't really fully grasp
There's
all of
pride in Jamaica, right? There's like a sense of...
Yeah, there's a pretty high sense of pride.
a good way. And
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, my mom, my siblings, my dad, it was, you talk about it, you don't talk bad about it, Even if something bad's going on there, like, you don't knock it, because something else good's happening there,
Yeah.
We had, in Ottawa, there was a Jamaica Ottawa Community Association, and we get together when I was younger for events and stuff. We'd have Christmases together, and my dad would sometimes play Santa Claus. Like, there was this, and everyone from Jamaica at that time at least knew 1 degree away, because most of their stories are the same. They pretty much came here at the same time when Trudeau, brought in the immigration law. So everyone had a story or was 1 degree away from everyone else.
Right.
But I visited my aunt in the States. I think probably when I was 7 or 8, and we. Outside on the streets, people are like trying to make a buck, hustling and whatever, selling this and that and this and that. So this one guy sold my mom 2 VHS tapes. One of them was of Louis Farrakhan, who is the leader of the Nation of Islam, stateside. A pretty divisive figure when it comes to black struggle, black independence, all that sort of thing. And then the other tape was the biography of Malcolm X, which was made back pretty soon after he died. I think it was probably late 60s, early 70s that it was made. And I remember watching that tape well over a dozen times, like when I was 7 or 8 years old. Like, I'd watch it, and I'd watch it again, and I'd watch it again, and I just on my own, I just did it. And it made me understand his life, the life of Malcolm X, and it made me understand more of what that struggle was when it came to the rights, when it came to the things that black people had to go through even to gain, their rights as people.
So that's the first time that there's the context for you of a struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like, it's not polished, the videos, like, it's clips of clips and this and that, and it'd probably be rated pretty high, not because of anything like crazy, but I would never have spoken about it to another white person ever, because he says some very, very poignant and very direct things to white people specifically, based on the history, and I never would have brought that up with any of my white friends.
Right.
Like, "Hey, come over. What do you want to watch? Let's watch this biography of Malcolm X. Let's leave it a go. Let's try it." No, not happening.
Yeah.
So that was before I was 10 years old. I watched that video. When I went to Vincent Massey, I was part of the gifted program. So Smarty Kids.
This is like junior high kind of age?
Yeah.
Okay.
So grade 5 to grade 8.
Okay. Yeah.
So 4 years. So I was like a smarty kid, and they put us all in a class together. and we were in a regional school, so everyone had to be piped in from wherever to go to the gifted program. And then all these kids who are just from the area also went to the school. And the area was close to a place called Russell. So there were a lot of kids who, were more low income, you'd say a bit more diverse when it came to the people who were there, different ethnicities, all that sort of thing. But that was the same time when BET, Black Entertainment Television, came out on cable. And I remember seeing it and just getting into it. The music, I got into sort of the culture a little bit, and I was fixated on it. I wore baggy clothes. I would buy Iceberg jeans. I'd buy FUBU. I'd buy Fat Farm. I even had like a pendant that I'd wear, No Limit. And I was about it because I never really saw blacks on television before.
Yeah.
In a way that was more independent. They were doing their own thing. They were, you're making your money and this and that. And, I'd watch basketball up until that point too. But I'm a musician as well. So it was way more intriguing for me.
Yeah.
So much so that for about 2 years, there was a magazine. I think it's digital only now. It's called Vibe Magazine. And it's just pretty much about the musicians, the culture. They'd have, opinion pieces in there. They'd have music reviews, just all about like black artists.
Yeah.
And I would eat those up. I'd buy one a month and I'd read it and I'd consume it, and it was just a part of my identity back then.
Right. Yeah.
I was about it.
Yeah. Did that ever occur? I mean, I'm just curious. But did it start to make you feel different from the white community that you were interacting with, or did that seem to blend naturally? Because that's the age when I'm meeting you, right, like at the end, sort of towards the end of that, and I never felt like there was any, but maybe you felt like these people are a little bit weird, but I'll hang out with them. I don't know.
No, I don't think anybody addressed it with me.
And you would be friends just as easily with anybody.
Yeah.
So you didn't you weren't in one group.
No, I didn't put myself in one, clique.
Yeah.
You know me, I can make friends with
anybody.
All different types of people, right? So I think it was just, and I identified with it. And I was just, I was about it. And again, the people who I hung out with never really asked me about it. It was never a conversation. And again, this is grade 6, grade 7, right? So no one's necessarily,
still figuring
itself out. And I think because I went, also one part too, is that going to Vincent Massey, like because there were kids from other places, some of them too were on the same strain that I was on when it came to hip hop and R&B and that sort of thing. So maybe there was a piece of me seeing that and feeling like there's a welcoming to be a part of that, even though I was a gifted kid. Like I don't know, but I was fully immersed into it.
Nice. Back
in grade 7, grade 8, and then when I hit grade 9, I stopped because I went to an art school. It was pretty much a drop, just about.
He just dropped. He dropped one set of clothes and took on a new.
Took on the microphone, started to sing everywhere. I went to Canterbury High School. I was part of the vocal program, and it's very much like Fame. It really is. We have the vocal people and the dance and the drama. And again, it was a really cool experience because it just felt like there was still a unity despite the diversity.
Yeah.
Sorry, that sounds very cliche but we were all specialized in our own areas, so we kind of all came to the same place. So if you take us out and put us in our own context, we're like the odd one out because you have these gifts, but like all of us are in there together doing it.
Yeah.
And it was great. So again, the race thing never really came out. I'd still listen to pop music, and I was still listening to like everything, still pop, like radio, still listening to R&B, still listening to all that stuff. But again, there was never a you versus us when it came to race. Yeah. Even though, I think about Canterbury, there wasn't a ton of black people there, but it was never something that I ever felt Church, same way. When I was going into youth group, I never felt like you're black and I'm not. Like that feeling never entered me. Never came across at all.
Yeah. So you got into this, what is it called? Baobab? Is that?
Yeah, Baobab Youth Performance.
Baobab.
Yeah.
And then you went on a trip. And I remember you doing this trip and coming back with pictures in like high school, right?
Yeah.
To Ghana.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
What was that impact on you?
So when I joined the group, I definitely had a connection to the drum and connect to the rhythm and the dance, the call and response. But then going to Ghana, it was a whole different experience for me. It felt like I understood myself better having gone to Ghana. Although I don't know what tribe I'm from originally. It might not be Ghana. It could be anywhere.
Right.
But still having that time in those 2 weeks there, living in the village that my director was living in. They built an exchange center there named after her, actually the director.
No way.
2 floors. I think it's probably built up now. They've expanded it since I was there.
That's amazing.
But it was just I just felt I understood myself better. I don't know how else to explain it. I was able to, even when I was interacting with those who lived in the village, there was just a different way I was interacted with than the white people in the group. I felt it. I knew it. They were asking, "Oh, why are they taking you here?" I was like, "I don't know." They just are. So I felt like I had a bit of I had a holistic understanding of myself, and of course, you're still finding yourself out as you grow. Mm-hmm. But I felt like I had this advantage having to be able to gone back and to see life in the village, and to, when we did a concert there on Canada Day, and we performed their music, and there's actually a video called Footsteps to Ghana somewhere out there that people can watch, and I'm in it, back when I was younger. And the videographer was asking, someone from the village, like, how do you feel about these, and he said, white people, North Americans, me in there, how do you feel about that? Well, they say, we don't understand why you care. Like, why are you performing this, And some of us here can't even do what you're doing. So we're fascinated at watching a reflection of ourselves presented to us by people who aren't us. There was like an appreciation towards it, Yeah. So I returned with just more insight. It was a very insightful trip for me. And I think the things that some people are going through right now and people are discovering about themselves, those are things I already discovered back when I was in high school based on my trip. Yeah. I was able to go to Elmina Slave Castle. It's one of the main points of reference when boats would come and take people from there to the Atlantic, to the Caribbean, and to the States, and that was very hard. It was very hard. I
can't imagine.
The host or the person who was presenting, who brought us through, the holding area, where some of the slaves sort of waited once they were captured, and they kind of just stayed there until the boats came back from the Atlantic for however long. You look into the main court, and there's, the chapel in the middle of the castle, and it was hard for me. I was really undone when I saw that. And knowing my history from before about Jamaica and how we became a colony, it was just this full circle thing. Like, this is how it went.
So you graduate from high school, this great artistic high school. After that,
Briarcrest.
You go to the
wheat fields.
Your
hometown.
Mostly white faces.
Your home province, Mike.
Yep.
It was something. It's very flat in southern Saskatchewan. Northern Saskatchewan is crazy. And not to knock Regina.
That's okay.
But
I'm used to it.
I guess.
I'm used to it. It's all good. I can take it.
No, when I went to Saskatchewan and went to Briarcrest, it was much the same when it came to majority and minority. There was maybe a handful of black people who went to Briarcrest. A couple of them were from the States. But first year, I met a girl from Alberta, and we were got talking about where I'm from and this and that. And then that's when I first heard someone really go in on the indigenous. Like, oh, like we've tried to help them with X, Y, and Z as a church. And they just go back to their drinking and na-na-na. And I was like, oh, okay. I was taken aback by that one. It's not what I expected, you know? And I kept hearing a few more comments here and there, sort of off-putting ones about indigenous and this and that. So that's when this is the first time I actually heard someone speak so hateful about them, like personally, you know? I've seen news briefings and this and that, but again, it's when a personal thing happens, you're like, like someone's internalized this, and it has made them bubble up with all this anger and disdain, you know? When I understood what was going on stateside, again, having watched Malcolm X and having an understanding of what's going on, again, sort of on a basic level, I really got thrown into it from Dave Chappelle, actually. That's when I really got thrown into it. Again, it's the media that kind of gave me this view. And, you know, Dave Chappelle, he's got some pretty crass commentary and some pretty, you know, off-putting jokes here and there, but he's a really smart guy. And he knows how to speak about the culture in a way that people, they understood. They it's something else talking about in there that I get, but I can't really put my finger on it. So I was working with these guys doing some music stuff, and we had to make a profile. And my one friend said, okay, well, I made your password grape drink, or grape drank is what he made my password. And I didn't watch Dave Chappelle's show back then. Like I missed it, but it was some reference to a joke that he made on his show. And then it just came to this point where like all these people who were white would make these Dave Chappelle jokes. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And until I watched it, I was like, okay.
So Dave Chappelle's kind of like discipling them into a vision of what black culture is. And then
he's giving them a snapshot, which is fine, but people are then taking that and just blanking it. Oh, they're all like that.
It's sort of like suddenly joking about it themselves.
Yeah, and you know, I don't necessarily
weird.
Blame Dave for that. I mean, his story is crazy, but that happened, and then I started to have to focus more on what Black Americans are and how much of that experience has sort of been put onto me, and a lot of it was back then. Yeah. And then with the proliferation of social media, you know, the stories that people have been talking about for decades. You know, I think of Rodney King back in 91. There was another shooting that happened in States. I don't remember how long after that one. Like Amadou Diallo was one who got killed by the cops. And then it was just like Eric Garner, Trayvon Martin, and just this ramp up of these filmed acts by law enforcement on blacks. Right. And then Black Lives Matter comes into the mix. And at that point, I'm watching it, and I'm hopeful when I see demonstrations and this and that, but it just kept happening all the time, you know? And I'd read one story that would take me to a rabbit trail of another story that didn't make the head news. The same thing happened. And that's sort of just been how it's been for the past number of years. So, you know, when we got to George Floyd, like I said from the beginning, I was like, another one. When's the next one?
Right. Yeah.